Next up is the Northern Action Group. So Bill Foster, who is the chair, come on up and he can introduce his Northern colleagues. Welcome along, gents. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have a presentation here? Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission, which I believe you have copies of. I have with me Mr. Glenn Ashton of Rodney Community Voices and Mr. Brian Mason of the Landowners and Contractors Association, who support the submission. We're here because the new legislation means the governing body, that's you people, now has direct responsibility for transport strategy and funding outcomes. That creates an opportunity for you to correct long-standing distortions created by centralised and urban-centric policies. This submission is not about Rodney asking for more money. It's about whether Auckland Council's new transport governance structure will allocate funding based on network function, burden and resilience, and whether transport spending in Rodney delivers the value for money that the Mayor says he wants. Rodney is the clearest example of where the current system has failed. Rodney contains approximately 23% of Auckland's named roads, 13% of total road kilometres and nearly 80% of Auckland's unsealed road network. Yet Rodney has only around 5% of Auckland's population. So this is not a typical urban network. Look at usage. Rodney carries approximately 11% of Auckland's traffic movements and around 15 to 18% of heavy commercial vehicle traffic. That matters because heavy freight creates higher pavement wear and faster deterioration. In the submission, I refer to this as the heavy vehicle multiplier. But Rodney also performs another role not recognised in current models. Rodney is also a resilience network. When State Highway 1 or State Highway 16 are disrupted, Rodney's local roads become the relief valves for the Upper North Highland freight economy. Unlike urban Auckland, Rodney's network has limited redundancy. Many corridors are single point of failure routes where disruption means freight diversion, loss of access and community isolation. The submission also raises concerns about the application of urban-centric transport assumptions for Rodney. Roads in Rodney are defined less by place and more by function and movement. A secondary rural connector may simultaneously function as a freight corridor, school route, diversion route and sole community access. The One Network framework already recognises that rural networks operate differently from urban networks, but current management, funding and the new IRCF still largely reflect urban assumptions. The result is deteriorating condition trends on rural sealed roads, and for unsealed roads, objective condition measurement is not yet publicly available. And there's a growing infrastructure funding gap associated with Rodney's growth. Development contributions of around $20,000 per dwelling appear materially below actual long-term infrastructure costs and are not identifiably reinvested in Rodney. AT has estimated transport infrastructure requirements in Warkworth alone at around $120,000 per dwelling, while total long-term public infrastructure costs may approach $200,000 per dwelling. At the same time, resistance to large rate increases constrains council's ability to close those gaps through general rating increases. So the result is predictable. Infrastructure deficits accumulate and rural networks become increasingly difficult to maintain. So this submission therefore asks the governing body, you people, to adopt a function-based, resilience-based and usage-based funding approach for Rodney. Recognise Rodney as a distinct network class with different operational requirements from urban Auckland. Provide transparent reporting of Rodney transport expenditure, maintenance outcomes, condition trends and public transport performance, and prioritise investment towards resilience, freight movement, connector roads and more efficient rural transport systems. This is not a request for preferential treatment. It is a request that transport funding and management reflect the assets being maintained, the loads being carried, and the regional functions being performed. So, thank you, and we'll happily answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Questions? So just Ken, then Shane, then John.
Thank you very much. Just thinking of your rural roads, the cost, you mentioned maintenance, thinking of drain maintenance. Do you think that a lot of our costs, or what do you think, is the drain maintenance being done properly, especially on your rural roads, and is that having an effect on the condition of the roads and the costs?
I think on the drainage, first of all, it's pretty substandard and it's split between AT and AC. So some of the work is not coordinated as well as it should. So like the mowing contract is under AC and the roading is under AT. So they don't coordinate to mow and spray and kill the weeds at the same time as the grader might be arriving to grade those gravel rural roads. So there's miscoordination. So pulling it together under one umbrella would be very beneficial. But there has been a thing in the country which is different from in urban areas. In urban, you have curb and channel. We don't have any curb and channel, as you can see from some of those pictures. So we just have sheeting off the road and culverts. Now, to get into your farm or your house or your lifestyle block, you're going to have a culvert under the road, and the burden falls on the people to clean that out. Unfortunately, the way the grader works on the road, it wing rows on the outside of the blade, and it builds up a consolidated mass that a normal lifestyle blocker hasn't got a chance of moving, and that blocks the culvert. So, and yet that's been pushed on to the ratepayers to clear that, and AT don't do that work. So, in answer, I would say that drainage really just does not work in Rodney for us.
Thank you. So that leads on to my next question. The procurement of contracts. Do you think that there's a way we could be procuring our contracts better that would deliver a value for money, better value for money?
Well, can I speak to that just briefly and say yes? I mean, the central contracting approach, it makes it administratively simpler for Auckland Transport in the past and now Auckland Council to administer, but effectively it destroys the opportunity for innovation and competition from the local contractors who actually know the areas they're working in. And that's been a problem in Rodney, and it results in higher cost and less efficient delivery of the services. And the model that's being currently operated, which we've discussed with AT, really is not working to the best advantage and increases costs. You have subcontracting overheads, you know, the ticket clipping problems, and then you have a lack of supervision of the work and maintenance of the quality. So there's no assurance that the quality is actually as it should be, and it's self-reporting within this current structure. There's lots of problems with the current management arrangement and its independence from what the local people see as an outcome. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think one of the problems is that no one knows Rodney better than the Rodney subcontractors that are sometimes used, but there are a lot of smaller contractors who don't get a look in just because of the way that it's done through Downers, and Downers very very rarely actually do the work. It's always subbed out. So you got AT sitting on top, you got downers in between, and you got a subcontractor at the bottom. And the local guys get left very little money and have to only limit what they do. Whereas they are kind of answerable to the community because they live in that community. So sometimes they get the blame for things that are just beyond their control. They don't get enough time or money to do an efficient job. And so that could all be streamlined if we went to local suppliers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, with your indulgence, expanding this a little bit further, if it's possible, because I've got you guys in front of me. We're talking about investment levels across the city and regional priorities. So I just want to be super clear and get your feedback. You've previously advocated to leave the Auckland Council area to seek investment and essentially secede from the super city. Is that still the position of your organisation?
Advocating.
Do you want to leave Auckland Council area or not?
From the Northern Action Group's point of view, and that's separate from this discussion about roading here today, the answer would be yes, but what we're saying is it doesn't matter whether it's Rodney or a Rodney-Kaipara merger or Auckland Council running the transport management of the whole asset network in Rodney. It needs to be done differently from the way it has been done in the past. What we're here today is talk about the need to match the management and the governance of the network asset to the need in the area, regardless of who's given governance responsibility for it.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair.
John.
Over the years, I've seen virtually every budget there's some kind of call on sealing Rodney's unsealed roads, and there's usually quite a limited budget that goes through. And the way the roads are treated, it is almost, and it's, I think, certainly a perception of some, as if Auckland Council is subsidising in some way the upkeep of Rodney's unsealed roads. Do you have any comment in respect of A, that perception, and B, I guess the extent of the budget that has been pretty well entrenched, I think, since the start of the Super City, to be honest?
I can answer that. For the first 3 years in the Super City, we got nothing. For the next 6 years, we got 1 million to seal more roads, and that's nothing. That does 1K at AT's cost. It could be considerably more if it was done in a different regime. Since then, and we got promised 12 million a year, but that was all back-end loaded, and we never got any more than about 2 million a year. And then Mayor Brown has rectified that, and he's front-end loaded it. So we're very thankful to the Mayor for the effort he's put in, and we made good progress in the last 2 years with an increased budget to 12 million. But we are getting some substandard sealing done, which is ripping off. So we're not happy about the quality, I guess, and that's going to hit us again with maintenance costs.
I just want to add on your general point, there is absolutely no evidence one way or the other ever been shown to show that either Rodney is being subsidised or subsidises Auckland. Our councillor Greg Sayers has argued for many years that we need more transparency at the local board level to identify where our rates go and where Auckland's money goes, but we've not had that. And so these impressions need to be disposed of by a better transparency of where the money is being spent in Auckland. I guess what we would say is that this is not a question, though, of subsidy. There is an asset that Auckland Council is responsible for, and it should manage it, taking into account the importance, the function, the condition, and the requirement and the use of the asset. And that's been ignored in relation to Rodney relative to the rest of Auckland. What we're saying, in terms of what Auckland spends on managing its road network assets, Rodney doesn't get the share that our numbers show it deserves in relation to what it contributes to Auckland.
Mayor
If
Brown?
I just might add to that, it's no secret that AT sweated the maintenance because of the budgets, even on maintenance of rural roads. So a lot of the gravel roads ended up deteriorating into clay. Brian could probably allude on that, where he's had milk tankers getting stuck. The problem with that is that it wrecks the base of the road. So even if you want to improve it further on, you've actually just destroyed your asset from the start. Any roading contractor would know that. So it's really come now home to roost.
Yes, I'll comment on that. Thanks, Bill and Glenn. The rural production roads are really suffering. I mean, we've got a lot of heavy stuff going out of there. It's the production house of Auckland, really, as far as rural goes. We've got a lot of milk tankers, a lot of stock trucks, a lot of fert trucks. It's an awful lot happening. The rural production roads are really suffering. The tourist routes get a bit of attention. We're seeing more of them being sealed, which creates another problem as to perhaps why. We sort of feel we're the powerhouse of Northern Rodney, and we need some rural production roads. So, yep, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Brown?
Okay, thanks for the submission. You make good points. And it is your role to be an advocate on behalf of what you have there, because, and you're right, that this is a big urban city, and you have to make a bit of noise to remind some of the things. I think that one of the things that will happen under AT, I've been checking with the CEO who's busy doing the changes, is that we will have kind of a more regional managed type of thing rather than central. And so there will be somebody more in charge of each area. I mean, I can't find who's in charge of the middle of the bloody city at the moment, but we're going to change that, let alone going out where you are. I think you made some very good points about the size of the actual cost of some of these out-of-sequence planning changes we have around the Warkworth area, when you've pointed out that perhaps that the amount of money we should be getting from developers is nearer 200,000 than 20,000. I think it's a very positive thing for us to pick up and tell the government about. We now have to deal with the fast tracking, which is sort of handing off our decisions to some idiots in Wellington. And Arvida, for instance, which is something we opposed, they'll be telling the government that it's 20,000 is too much, whereas if they had to pay 200,000, they'd realise what a dumb idea theirs is. So I'm going to use some of this information. I think your the points you raise and advocate something that needs to be continued. Never stop advocating. One of the things that we're going to do when we get our hands on AT fully is, of course, standardisation. A lot of the things. The crossfalls on rural roads are standardised at 3%. They should all be 6%, which is how you get better drainage. And there's nothing wrong with dragging clay back into the surface along with the stones that end up in the drains. We have shown some signs of downers actually picking up on some of the better ways to manage unsealed roads. And a well-managed unsealed road is in some ways better than a poorly laid, cheap seal road, which is just done with chip seal. A bad chip seal is not as good as a well-maintained unsealed road, actually. I think there's a few shitty chip seal lays up there. So be careful what you wish for. And the other thing about the chip seal road is it encourages visitors from Auckland to drive on the damn things. So if you keep it with a good unsealed road, you'll be able to use it yourselves. So I'm generally supportive. You won't get everything you want, but it's good to have your hand out for it and raise these points. And I think it's a well presented paper. I did say there that apparently one question, the government forgoes tolls on State Highway 1 when the alternatives when the free alternative ones are blocked. Is that the case? Do they actually do that? It sounds, I mean, I wouldn't have thought they were competent to do that.
I think the recent example when the alternate route from Puhoi to Warkworth was blocked was that they cancelled the tolls for people travelling on State Highway 1.
For everybody. I mean, that was just strike me as just basically dumb. You don't have to travel on it. I'm quite surprised. They should have advertised free toll today. Huh. You learn something every day. Thanks for coming.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming down. I don't know if everyone's aware, but Mr. Foster's actually the ex-chief executive of the New Zealand Stock Exchange. So thank you for your input into this as an economist, Bill. So I think the timing of the presentation is outstanding because we're right in the middle of this reform process and we can have the chance of looking at new models. And in the room, we have the Chief Executive of Auckland Council listening, along with the Mayor, who will be giving heavy direction towards any new modelling. I mean, you've taken a big view here, big picture view, in terms of how a model perhaps should work, could work better around functionality, resilience and, usage. There's also, I think the thing that probably affects me the most is that when I see these statistics around the deaths and serious injuries across Auckland by a local board area, and unfortunately it's the Franklin's second after Rodney, which are both the rural bookends of Auckland, and a lot of those, are deaths and serious injuries way above the rest of Auckland. And I think there's probably, what I can conclude, a direct correlation between perhaps what you're talking about today in terms of the conditions of those roads and those deaths and serious injuries. And those deaths and serious injuries aren't typically local people, other people from other wards across Auckland visiting, and also visitors to Auckland, whether they be overseas or outside of Auckland. So it's a very sad situation, and one that needs to be, addressed. And I think probably in terms of us looking at a new way of modelling the funding, this is a golden opportunity. So my question is around in terms of your thinking, what you've presented today, does that include weighting towards trying to improve deaths and serious injuries, or do you think maybe that should be another factor that should be included into this regional thinking?
I think the best response to that, Councillor Sayers, is that we've argued significantly with AT for a different management approach to the whole of the asset, which is the network in Rodney. And they've had the functional silo-based approach, which has been typical of CCOs, which uses centralised policies and management controls for the allocation of funds across quite different areas, which results in conflicts when we don't get efficient utilisation. The maintenance of the unsealed roads needs to be coordinated with the program for improving them, either the widening, the strengthening, the drainage or the sealing. And that doesn't necessarily happen because there is no coordinated or overarching management of the network in the Rodney area. And that would be extremely valuable. It's not just about more money. You can always throw more money and fix more roads with more money. It's about getting good value for what is being spent now, and we don't think we're getting that. We think we can get more bangs for our buck out of a better managed structure across the whole of the network, which would coordinate the maintenance and the improvements and the sealing and the utilisation and the planning on a more, certainly a district basis rather than centralised silo management, which creates these management control driven differences. So things don't get done together. And there is a waste, the prioritisation is the problem. Glenn can talk about the fact that we have a lot of expensive machinery rolled out to seal some sections of road, and then there's bits of that road left unsealed. All the fancy machinery goes away and gets brought back again later on to do another bit of the road. just because it's driven by management controls and the accounting framework rather than local on-the-ground management. So I think that answers.
It does, Bill, and again, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming down. I think you made an excellent presentation today.
I just might add to what Bill said there. I think a lot of urban people, especially more out of Auckland, travelling north, they tend to travel on the 2 or 3 arterial roads that go north. And we are thankful to NZTA that we have a motorway that does dump everybody in Warkworth. It would have been good if it had gone further at that point, but that's coming. Highway 16 is the other road, and the old Highway 1 is probably the 3 most used roads for people trying to travel through Rodney, which is what a lot of people do. But I think people forget that Rodney is 45% of the land area of the super city. That's a huge chunk of land. And our inner arterial roads from east to west are very much in poor shape the further north you go. And it's those roads that we use for production. And as Bill alluded to, we do a lot of forestry, there's a lot of dry stock, there's a lot of dairy stock, there's a lot of quarries, and all your roading material and sand comes from up north. So we need that infrastructure in place so that it is safe. My grandchildren travel about 15 k's to go to school. It's not like an urban area, and they travel from in the heart of Rodney, which very few people would even know exists. I doubt that people would know where Aharoa is, or even less would probably know where Tapora is. So it is interesting, just what a vast area it is, and we need those connecting roads sorted out as quickly as is possible.
Okay, we've got 4 people left to ask questions, so I'm going to ask people that they ask their questions succinctly, and gentlemen, you answer succinctly. So, Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and the numbers are quite extraordinary. On the unsealed roads, obviously we have increased it and know the importance of it, but did you realise that the government decided not to deprioritise that and did not give, we're 100% funding that program? Have you spoken to the MPs about, would be nice to have a little help? Because we prioritised that, but we decided to still 100% fund the program, even though they cut 50% essentially.
Yes, we understand that. NZTA makes its decisions about the classes of work that it's prepared to subsidise. And yes, it reduced its funding this year, and AT's had to compensate for that or readjust its programs to take that into account. Our point is not where the money comes from or what the funding is. Our point is that you need to look at the road network as an asset and fix it in relation to what its requirements are. And a lot of decisions have been made, I think regrettably, my own view, on the basis of whether NZTA would be providing a subsidy or not. The issue is, does the road need to be fixed and improved, not where does the money come from?
Yeah, no, I agree, but with the pressure on our budgets, it would be good to have some help from government. So your advocacy to them would help as well, help us, help you. The other thing, just on the figures, because you have mentioned figures in your presentation, just it'd be good for us to be able to figure out where, because I think our budget each year for road renewals is about 200 million, not the 1.8. So I think it'd be good to figure out the discrepancies and how we can help you, not just with the money, but money does end up being part of the issue, then we wouldn't have to do half a road at once. But it would be good to see some more of the data behind, so if Councillor Say has got a bit more information. I think he sent us some, but
we would love more information. We don't know, for example, what it costs to provide public transport in Rodney, and we don't know how much of that is a subsidy or how much of that is paid for by the users. We do know that public transport is not run efficiently in Rodney because it follows Auckland Transport's urban-centric policies. We have 40-seater buses running around that hardly carry any people in them for a lot of the day. You come down the 995 from Warkworth now to Silverdale, and it's in a city-oriented bus that doesn't even have seatbelts like the intercity coaches do. It's travelling down a motorway. We have 40-seater buses running around the town that only carry children and pensioners and are mostly empty. It's not an efficient system, and the private sector, frankly, could do a better job of running a bus network in Rodney. But the AT option does not allow for the private sector to be involved. If you have public transport, AT says we have to provide it. So there are a lot.
Sarah?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. My question is, are there any unintended consequences perhaps that you're worried about in terms of the rural character of Rodney as a result of these programs? Should we be able to fully fund the whole thing, for example? Are there any kind of mitigations that you would recommend putting in place to protect that rural character, for example?
Environmentally, I think a sealed road is actually better for Rodney than a gravel road for a start, because we get a lot of asthma and health problems. That's a major issue for our children and our grandchildren. So, and environmentally, dust is a damn nuisance, and the dust that comes off a metal road is contaminated. So a sealed road is far more healthy in our opinion. And opening up Rodney for outsiders is probably a good thing. They get to get a taste very close on their doorstep of what rural life is really about. You can drive through pristine areas of forestry and many different types of farming and vineyards. So there's a lot going on that is environmentally friendly.
So the
So
question
perhaps I could-
wasn't quite that.
Sorry. Just add the comment here that the Mayor's growth pays for growth policy is relevant here, because we're not objecting to growth in Rodney. We're happy to see the growth as long as it takes place in a way that fits the area that we live in, and then that it pays for the improvements to the infrastructure necessary to cope with the growth.
Julie?
Kia ora, thank you. It's really interesting. I have a particular interest in the safety aspect, and and this is something that Councillor Sayers has been raising with us recently as well, as the potential for safety improvements from investment in this area. And I'm just interested in, even if next year's budget we suddenly increase the ability to do this, it would still take years to get through all of these roads, right? And so I'm really interested in the interim. What do you feel we could do until we can address all of these roads, however long that takes? And in particular, in light of the safety staff, I'm looking at some of the stats for Rodney, and they are terrible. The deaths and serious injury stats. 78% of those for the last year that were looked at were in above 50 kilometre per hour areas, and the analysis is that there is a close link with the severity of the crashes leading to more severe outcomes, fatalities and serious injuries, because these are high speed environments, and you've pointed to the fact often people are unfamiliar with them as well. So I wanted to test your interest in, while we work on the funding issue, is using speed enforcement and changing speed limits a tool that you're interested in that safety space? And then I have one other question about the road classification stuff, Chair.
Okay, just to speak firstly to the DSI issue. I mean, yes, rural areas obviously have higher levels of fatalities or serious injuries because people are travelling longer distances at higher speeds, and these accidents are occurring at points in the roading network that are dangerous. you know, at intersections or places like that. Auckland Council seems to have a policy of allowing a lot of ribbon development of housing along 80-kilometre rural roads, and that just injects more people into the road network and creates more problems. Our argument would be that this emphasises the need for spending more on improving the quality of the roads in order to reduce the DSIs and the risks that people face. I mean, we struggle to get money to improve and widen and strengthen the roads in areas where they are potential safety risks. It's not a question of reducing the speed, because the relevance of the freight network and the contribution it makes to Auckland's economy means that we don't want to reduce the speed. That should not be the short-term solution. The short-term solution should be more money. So allocating more funds will certainly help with the alleviation of the problems until you can get a handle on prioritisation. One of the things we would say is that the way Auckland Transport has prioritised the investment in the roading network doesn't necessarily reflect the way Rodney's roads get used as connectors between different settlement areas and farming and the consuming side of the whole of the region. That's not happening. They're prioritising it just on a traffic count basis, and the traffic counts may not be so high on some of our more dangerous roads.
Okay, thanks. I'm
No, we're not going to.
disappointed, I guess, but I'll get on to the next question.
I'm just giving a little direction to the team here. One can answer, because we're nearly 40 minutes into this, and so we're not going to go for too much longer.
Cool. Thanks, Chair. So I guess I'm confused by an answer that says you wouldn't use a tool in the interim that could help, but I'm going to leave that one there and not supplementaries on that, Chair, and shift to obviously a big part of what we're working through at the moment is this road classification framework about whether local boards or some form of governing body will be responsible for which roads. In looking at the ones for Rodney, a lot of the roads that I think you're probably talking about are going to sit with the local board in what's currently proposed. It's still draft. And I just wondered if what's your conversation with the local board about this, given that they're likely to be the decision makers about the very prioritisation that you're concerned about. Obviously, you're talking to us about the money, and some of that will sit with us, but some of the prioritisation is actually likely to sit with the local board. So what's the conversation going like there? Might be too early, but yeah.
My understanding is the conversation is just starting between transition people and the local board on this issue. And my observation, unless my colleague disagrees, the local board's not particularly well equipped to deal with these issues because they're not supported by staff. They don't have any staff to help them make these decisions, so they're relying on council staff to advise them and guide them on these issues. And there will be a conflict inevitably between the road use that is allocated to the local boards and the management of the road, which stays with Auckland Council or the Auckland Council people. I can see lots of problems from the decision-making split between arterial roads and local roads under the new framework. Our argument has simply been that the one network framework that NZTA has created had a lot of time and effort put into it. Roads could have been selected on that basis, but I also think that not enough thought was given into how the local boards and the governing body will interact regarding control of road use. The simplest thing for a place like Rodney would be to say, give all the roads, call all the roads arterial roads, or call them all local roads. So if you call them all local roads in Rodney, then Rodney could manage them all and we could have a team of people that could do the job properly, whether from Auckland Council or for the local board, however you structure it. I think there are a lot of problems there that are going to surface in this structure.
Okay, last question, Maggie.
Kia ora. While we have you here, What further insights can you provide around the longer-term resilience risks of not addressing these issues now? Example, the acknowledged substandard drainage infrastructure, particularly given this corridor's importance as a transport connector to Te Tai Tokerau, to and from, and the increasing exposure to severe weather events and flooding events. Particularly, you've got two passageways, State Highway 1 and 16. Interested in your insights, if any.
I think the major impact has been in the quality of life of the people using the roads, the people that live on the dusty roads that need to be resealed, the people whose livelihoods depend on the quality of the roads that are not being well maintained. I just think we've had to put up with that for a long time. We're just making the case this is not currently a fair and proportionate approach to dealing with it.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I support that. And as a State Highway 16er myself, I understand those severely. Those grounds have gone under at Kaukapakapa, at Makarau, and it's blocked and trapped people in those roads. So I accept and appreciate what you say.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you, gentlemen. Greg, you want to move? Seconder, Ken? We're just going to receive and thank you. So, all those in favour say aye. And against, carried. Thank you, gents. Safe travel home.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors.
We have no local board input, so the next item up is the CRL update. And so I think we've got